Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. You're watching PHLY. That's right, PHLY Flyers. My name is Bill Matz, and I am joined by Philadelphia's #1 hockey beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. We're experimenting with a couple of different things right now, and there's a topic I wasn't sure when we would get to, just given the Flyers' schedule and how we've been building the shows lately, that I did want to bring up with Charlie, because I think he and I have a bit of a different take on it. And it's the recent move. Well, the report that 30 out of the 32 teams responded to a letter from the NHL asking about decentralizing the draft, which essentially means moving in the direction of the NBA and NFL, where like teams have their war rooms in their own facilities. The draft takes place elsewhere, but the entire front office doesn't fly out, and it's more about what's going on with the players and stuff. Charlie, I saw a bit of your reaction to this on Twitter last night, and I was a little surprised by it, but I do think working members of the media have a different reaction to this than a lot of fans. Just give me your take on this idea of a decentralized draft and what it means.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, media members are biased because we love the draft. The draft gives us time to, number one, it is the central meeting spot of the offseason. It's when we get to meet with everyone. We get to meet with people in the front office, when we get to meet with agents, when we get to meet with basically everyone. And honestly, it's a blast. Like, going to the draft is a lot of fun. And so obviously there's a bias here. I do not want to see that change. It looks like it's almost certainly going to be changed. That said, my frustration as well is that what I see this as the first step towards the NHL turning the draft into like just another day on the calendar that no one gives a shit about. Because the unique part about the NHL draft, the reason why people actually went out of their way to go to the draft, and I'm not talking about people in organizations, I'm talking about fans, was the spectacle of it. And suddenly you're going to make it into not a spectacle. And if I had faith that the NHL was going to be willing to do what the NFL has done with their draft, which is basically turn it into a 2-day long celebration of the sport in a new city every year, then I would be like, that's fine. Then it doesn't matter that people aren't going. But to me, this is setting up for them to basically try their best to go back to putting the NHL draft into a conference room and just have everything done over Zoom calls. And suddenly this is just like the MLB draft, where it's literally everybody on a conference call. And to me, the NHL needs to find ways to create more spectacles, not find ways to create fewer of them. And that's my major issue.
I understand your distrust of what they're going to do with it ultimately, but to me, like, if we make this more about the players, like I look at the way they've handled Connor Bedard, and it kind of gives me a little optimism, because they're like, hey, look, a star. Let's treat him like one. And like all of his games to start the year are on national TV, and they're following him around like he's fucking LeBron. Like, I am cool with that. The idea that I heard, and it was really just, maybe it was just Elliot Friedman kind of freelancing on 32 Thoughts, like turn it into NHL Con, where it's like a convention, much like the NFL does. Like, okay, maybe the front offices aren't there, and that does suck for the media because it is the time where everyone kind of gets their connections and everything. But if it is a festival, like the alumni's there, and something from the Hall of Fame, like the cup is there and all the trophies, and like it's just a multi-day festival celebrating hockey, and then some players are drafted too. Like, that's a good idea to me. That's creating stars rather than like, hey, look at that assistant GM over there. Didn't he used to play? Let's talk about him for 10 minutes. Like, that's the opposite of what we want. But since it's the NHL, yeah, you're probably right.
Well, to me, and this is just something I've heard, to me, what I understood was that the reason why this whole thing got kicked off was because they were having trouble logistically getting it in Vegas. And then suddenly someone was like, well, why we just not do this at all? Because apparently what the concern was, and this is so classic NHL, like I read this and I just thought to myself, this is the NHL in a nutshell. The explanation was the reason why no teams want to bid for the NHL draft is because the NHL draft doesn't make the team's money; it only makes the city's money. So therefore, not enough arenas and teams are bidding to get the NHL draft in their arena, and therefore this allows us to be, and I think the wording was, more creative with where we put the draft. And to me, more creative means like, what are we going to stick it in Xfinity Live? Like, is that the plan? Because we want to be creative because no team's going to have it in their arena.
I mean, like, there are opportunities like the Seattle thing, I think, where they did the expansion draft, how it was like that big stage show. Like, that's cool.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
But also, owners, maybe build your own goddamn stadiums like the Flyers. I don't know. Own your own building instead of letting the city run. Like, here's the problem with city-owned stadiums. Like, anyway, this is just a quick thing.
I just think it boils down to I have zero trust in the NHL's ability to build events and market them correctly and actually make them things. And I think with the NHL draft, they had an event and now they're changing it. And is it possible that the new event could be better? Yeah. And if it is, I'll give them props, but I have zero confidence that the new event will be better. I personally am of the belief that this is just an excuse for them to downsize, spend less money, and have it be less of a big deal.
And they'll hide behind the excuse, well, there hasn't been enough drama at the NHL draft recently because GMs are afraid to negotiate in public. Now they can do it in the safety of their own facility, and we'll see all these blockbuster trades. No, we won't. That's the excuse, guess what? That ain't gonna happen. Like, the biggest trade we've seen is Ristolainen. Like, come on. All right. That's it. That we just wanted to have a quick reaction to this decentralized draft thing. Make sure you tune in to the show weekly, post game tonight, following the Flyers game. So tune into that. Subscribe to the YouTube. Subscribe to the podcast. Charlie, I'll talk to you later, my friend.
See you tonight, Bill.